Welcome to the podcast, Legal Pawns, spotlighting how the American justice system uses its citizens for a game of greed, political gain, and control. We are here to educate, empower, and facilitate change through truth and facts.
Okay, so today we are going to be talking to somebody who is working in the prison reform system in Florida, and we are going to be discussing what the prison system looks like in Florida, as well as some of the changes that we would like to be made here in Florida. And I will go ahead and introduce you to this person or have her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I am a criminal justice reform advocate. My husband is currently incarcerated in the Florida system. And I became an advocate just because I saw the struggles that I went through with my husband. And it's so compounded. And I just wanted to help be the voice. I especially became more vocal when the whole COVID crisis started, and especially in the prisons.
Perfect. And as we were talking before we started recording, we were talking about a lot of times the perception is that people like you and I, we are against incarceration. I just want to make it clear, we're not against incarceration if the person has actually committed a crime. We do agree that there should be some incarceration. Definitely. I think that, though, as we were speaking off air, a lot of times animals in the shelters are treated better than humans in prison are treated. There's a misconception in the American public that once somebody's incarcerated, that it is like a spa, so to speak. They get free medical. They get unbelievable access to education. They get unbelievable access to all kinds of, different types of programs out there, that they're getting these amazing meals, that it's, I've heard it even called Camp Cupcake. And I'm sure there may be one or I'm sure there may be one or two prisons out there like that, but the majority, from what I'm hearing, is not like that. Would you like to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, definitely not here in Florida. We have 67 facilities in the state, throughout the state. The majority of them do not have air conditioning. And when during the summer, when the heat temperature goes up to 97 and 100, and you're in a metal type building, it soars. And then, of course, during the winter months, there's no heat. The meals are, when the COVID started, you better have liked bologna and sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, because that's all they got for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The conditions inside are horrendous here in Florida. There's the programs that they have are very sparse. They're not, and even to get into the program, it's, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. There is one facility that my husband was at, the medical dorm they had to transfer the guys from there because the building that the medical unit was housed had mold. Because a lot of these buildings are 20 to 25 years old, if not older. It's, property that the state took over and stuff. And, when I go to visit, the caked on dust on the vents, the peeling paint, and, all that stuff. And who knows how many of these have lead in the paint, the dust. My husband suffers from asthma. So anytime he's in a new dorm or anything like that, his allergies are always acting up because of the fact that, there's dust. And the ones that don't have air conditioning, they have two big fans on either side, and it's basically blowing hot air. There's ants, there's roaches. They've had, there's been times that he'll go into his locker and, there'll be little pieces of papers missing because some critter of sorts got into his property. He had, commissary that he had bought, and it got infiltrated with ants. So the waste of the money there. So it's bad, and it's as advocates, we always encourage our lawmakers to go visit the facility so they can see it firsthand. And a lot of them have, a lot of them haven't. But it's just, until you see it, it's just it's just bad. It shouldn't be that difficult to try to, I mean, there's a bunch of people there. The guys can, and the girls for the female incarcerated, give them some paint, let them do the work. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's not like, I mean, they're already spending idle time there. I always said that, like Habitat for Humanity, they say that, the individuals, they give it to him, they take more pride in it. I mean, why not create a program like that? Give them the tools to be able to, repair their own facility. They're in there 24/7. But it's just the mold, the water. I think recently there was, in the Panhandle, one of our Santa Rosa locations, there was a backflow issue, and you had guys that were in the dorms, and the back of the sewer backed up into the dorms. And you can only imagine being locked in your cell and having to, there was no running water, and, sewage basically coming up through the pipes. That's just horrendous. And it took, I don't even know, to be honest, I don't even know at this point if it's been repaired or fixed. I hope so, but it's atrocious and horrendous, the day-to-day stuff that they go to. I mean, they've been served moldy food, and it's just, it's heartbreaking. They're already going through a hard time, and then you call and, he's sweating and they're not giving enough bottled water, and there's just no accountability. And it's hard because these facilities are old, and anybody knows that any building needs maintenance, and it doesn't seem like a lot of these facilities have been maintained. And not to mention that with COVID, I'm always asking my lawmakers to see if there's some way that they can be cleaned properly. I know that when I saw the news, there was other facilities outside of the state of Florida that they were in hazmat. They did the whole pressure washing, the intense cleaning. Not to say that that's never been done before COVID, but I think it should be something that should be addressed definitely now with the whole COVID. We currently have, I believe the last time I looked at the dashboards, we had 189 individuals that have passed away within our prisons due to COVID. And we've had facilities that didn't have any sort of outbreaks up until now. And now all facilities have been touched basically with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sad to see, and they call their family members, and they're stressed out, and it's heartbreaking.
How many prisons do you know in Florida are privatized versus federally or state funded?
There are 7 private prisons within Florida. The majority are by GEO Group, and I believe there's there's 2 or 3 by other entities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know them off the top of my head, but the majority are by the GEO groups, and their contract with all the private facilities, part of their contract is that they are supposed to keep 90% of capacity. That is written in their contract. So
explain for the people out there that don't understand what the 90% capacity means.
It basically means that they are, per their contract, they have to maintain 90% of incarcerated individuals at their facilities. So that just, it's, when it comes down to it, prisons is a business of sorts. And the private prisons make, it costs the state, I think, $34,000 a year, roughly. Don't quote me exactly on that, but it's roughly in that ballpark a year to house an incarcerated individual within Florida. And the private prisons require that 90% of their number. So let's say if they are at 100, if their capacity is 100 incarcerated individuals, they have to be as close to that 100 as they can. Otherwise, I guess they get penalized or something. But that is written in their contract. And to me, that's astonishing that, when we're trying with mass incarceration, I think Florida is like one of the top 3. And mind you, we're not as big as many other states, but we're one of the top 3 as far as prison population. I think last number I saw was 96,000 incarcerated individuals. And we're talking about individuals who are there for a felony murder rule, which means that individual didn't necessarily have to kill somebody. It just basically meant that they might have been in the car where their friend was inside killing somebody, and because they were in the car, they get charged with a felony murder rule, and they're serving life sentences.
Now, I want to interject real quick on that one so that people really get a clear picture. If you pull into a 7-Eleven and my friend decides to go in and rob that 7-Eleven, even if I have no knowledge that my friend is going in there to rob that 7-Eleven, and for whatever reason, my friend robs 7-Eleven and shoots the clerk and kills them, I can go to prison for that, even though I did not have any knowledge that that crime was going to happen or that it did happen. Let's say that
Correct.
I had, earphones on for whatever reason, but let's just pretend I had earphones on. I didn't hear the gunshot. My friend gets in the car. They're perfectly calm. There's no sign of struggle. We drive away. We get pulled over. I can go to prison for that. One of the things that has changed in the United States is that it used to be you had to prove a person had the intent to commit a crime. Right. Now in the United States, we do not have to have an intention or prove an intention. They can convict you basically without that.
Yeah, and there's 7 other states that have repealed that law, the felony murder rule. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Florida has not been one. There's even cases that, if 2 individuals go to a home and the homeowner shoots and kills one of the individuals, the other person that was with them can also be charged with a felony murder rule when neither one of them were the ones that killed anybody. A lot of the incarcerated, it's either because of mandatory minimums, meaning that if you're charged with a specific crime, you have to serve at least 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's part of the statute of whatever you're charged with. There's the prison, the PRR, prison re-release mandate that also carries a mandatory minimums. And then there's a lot of people that are in, for drug offenses that have given, lengthy sentences. And of course, sadly, it's up to, the prosecutor, decides what they charge, but it's also in Florida, you can be charged with the same crime in 3 different counties in Florida, and your sentence can be completely different. So there's a huge disparity as far as the system within Florida. It's not consistent. And the same thing, with the wardens at the facilities, what one will allow at one facility is not what one allows at another facility. It's just allows for too many variances between the counties and between the facilities that it's not consistent, and that's unfair. And unfortunately, race and finances always become an issue. There's individuals that could be out on bond, but they can't afford it. And I mean, there's some counties like Hillsborough County, they have an intervention release, a task force that actually looks at previous crimes and looks at, did we do the right thing, integrity unit that they have. I wish all the counties had something like that, but it's left up to each individual county as far as the sentencing. The prosecutors are the ones that charge. I mean, there's a lot of times that the prosecutor decides, and even if the judge wanted to lessen the sentence, they couldn't. Their hands are tied. So in this legislative session, I mean, we're hoping to address one of the things is gain time. Currently in Florida, when somebody is sentenced, they have to at least serve 85% of their sentence. We're trying to get that down to 65%, not only to alleviate the mass incarceration within our system, but to save the state money. There's $800 million that can be saved. And going into the session, Florida already is facing a vast budget deficit because of the COVID-19 and the restrictions. We know where Florida, our number one thing is Disney World and tourism, and nobody's coming to Florida, at least not in the way that they used to. And our budget for Florida has had a huge impact because of that. So I know a lot of the lawmakers are looking to save money and cut costs, but they can. I mean, that would be a simple thing. And we're not talking about, a lot of people say releasing. We're not talking about releasing those charged with sexual offenses or anything like that. I mean, it would be, those that, have had good behavior, those that have proven themselves to want to do the right thing. And then, of course, there's some law thing about changing the different sentencing programs that we have, the mandatory minimums and the PPR, but also the conditions inside. I mean, as a family member, the cost of incarceration for myself, with the phone calls, it's $2.65 for 15 minutes. There's the cost of sending an email. There's the cost of a video visit. And then, of course, the commissary. The commissary is you go to the price, you look at the price of the dollar store at something and just up it like 20% or even 50% in some cases.
Yes.
And that's hard because, in my husband's case, he has stomach issues. And there's a lot of, guys that have stomach issues because he right now is in for a violation of probation. But during his first incarceration, he contracted a bacterial infection that basically got rid of all the good bacteria in his stomach. And the reason that he caught that was because there was, the trays, it wasn't clean properly between meals, and he lost a lot of weight. And even last year at this time, he lost about 20-30 pounds in a rapid succession, and he finally was diagnosed with IBS. So he can't eat everything that everybody else eats. Sometimes he has to, because I just don't have the money to put on his account. And that gets stressed because he's stressed because, he doesn't feel good. Everything that he's eating is going through him. He's vomiting, diarrhea, and I can't put money on because, I have bills to pay and things on the outside. And that makes it stressful. And of course, IBS is triggered by stress. Ramen noodles shouldn't have to cost more than $2. I mean, you get a whole package out here for like $1 for 6. But the upcharge that they have between hygiene, it's like the generic hygiene. I mean, even if they allowed us to, order items through Walmart and then have it shipped, I don't see why that would be, such a difficult thing. We wouldn't have access to it. It's shipped directly to them. They would, make a list of things that we can and cannot ship, but it's just everything is made so difficult. He's been incarcerated this time since about 2017, and I literally have sent like over 1,000 emails for one thing or another.
The problem is that I do not think that the public really understands that if you go to jail or prison and you have a special dietary need, even if it is a severe life-threatening allergy, most prisons will not accommodate that. They refuse to accommodate it. In addition, the amount of food that they are given, especially a grown man or woman, is about a quarter of what your intake is on the outside, if even that generous in a lot of prisons. I have heard of food coming in like potatoes that are not washed, so that by the time the inmate gets them, there's rocks and dirt in their potatoes, which are a disease. The food, anything that's sometimes if they are given any type of protein like a meat, which is very rare, if it's supposed to have been cooked, sometimes it's not cooked as well as it should be, again exposing them to disease. And the commissary is very important in a lot for them because it does make up what they're not getting, the food intake that they're not getting.
And not to mention that one of the other big issues that we have here in Florida is the amount of time that they're given. In some cases, maybe 3 minutes to eat their food. So, I mean, that in itself affects your digestive system, trying to gobble down something so quickly. So
And a lot of the food is starchy filler food that doesn't have a lot of nutritional value to it. Also,
Right.
I don't know about your prisons in Florida, but I know that in some prisons around the country, that females have to buy their own tampons, personal hygiene product. They are given maxi pads, but they're I call them the 1960s maxi pads, that they're thicker than a diaper, which is uncomfortable
Right.
and not very good for the female prisoner as far as hygiene goes. It,
We just
they,
had legislation last session to address that.
but isn't it sad that
Not
here
that
we
we
are
should
in
have had to have
2000,
legislation, but yeah.
we're still discussing it's a luxury for a person to have what they need to care for themselves for a function that is happening to them.
Right.
It's not a
Yeah.
luxury, it's a necessity, and we're still having this
Yeah.
discussion. The soaps that they have to buy, the shampoos that they have to buy, they are given a certain amount. It's never enough. It's even if they're frugal, it's never enough. And the quality of it is worse than what you can find at discount stores. It's what they give generally is, from my understanding, full of lye and other chemicals. So
Hmm.
it's inhumane.
Yeah. I mean, with the toilet paper shortage that everybody experienced, it was 10 times more so in the facilities. It's just so sad what they go through on a day-to-day basis, trying to get just the basic needs: toothbrush, toothpaste, towels, or the uniforms that they have to wear. um they're raggedy. They're not, I know in other states they get like a whole fresh new set. Here they like, you don't know how many times that my husband I've gone to visit, in his shirt he has like a different name because he just got a hand me down from who knows what, who, and who knows how many other people had it before he got it. It shouldn't be like that. I understand that, people have committed crimes, and I understand that they have to do their time, but the way that they have to do their time is just appalling. For United States, one of the global leaders within the country, within the world, and we treat our incarcerated so badly. It's just disgusting to me. I think Nelson Mandela had said, you can weigh a society by how they treat their incarcerated, and we're bad. We're like worse than bad. And it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. And unfortunately, when you talk about prison and incarceration, a lot of people who it hasn't directly affected, kind of brush it off and don't pay attention to it. It's not until they have somebody incarcerated that they actually see it. Of course, this year with everything that's gone on, with the protests, with all the killings and stuff like that, criminal justice reform has become something more of a viable topic. I'm just hoping that helps, that all those lives that were lost, somehow helps us to be able to continue the conversation and continue to talk to our lawmakers, and hopefully it tugs at their heartstrings, and then they'll realize that we need change. We can't sustain the system the way that it is, buckling already, and the issues that were already there were just magnified with COVID-19. My husband's been in quarantine like 5 different times, and to date he still hasn't been tested. Unfortunately, his facility was one of the first facilities, and I actually was told by an individual that they were the guinea pig of how they were going to deal with COVID-19 within the prisons. And because of that facility with none of, they were only showing symptoms. That was who got tested. And the only symptom that they were qualifying the incarcerated on was if you had a fever. But a month or two later, then we found out that you could have the no taste, no smell, and other types of symptoms that didn't have to be just a fever. And we're pretty sure that he had it at one point, because he had the no taste, no smell, the achiness, but he was never tested. He was just placed in quarantine over and over. And unfortunately, when they were placed in quarantine, if they say they have symptoms, quarantine here in Florida means confinement. So you're placed in confinement for not doing anything wrong, just for being sick. So that just makes it, like I said, 10 times worse.
Going back to, you were talking about lawmakers making visits to the prison system. I've spoken to other individuals who have said that when lawmakers do visit the prisons, that the prison gets a heads up ahead of time, that they suddenly go under mass cleaning, mass repairs. The prisoners are then dressed in the best that they find for them. If they are showing up for a meal to walk through during mealtime, suddenly the prisoners are getting the best meals that they've ever had, or a best meal that they've ever had. And that the lawmakers are only allowed to speak to certain prisoners who have been, let's say, chosen. Is that the best way to
Right.
put it? Chosen to be the best representative of the prison. Have you heard or anything like this?
Yeah, I mean, some lawmakers know that they need to go unannounced. We have a few representatives that know that and have done that. But ultimately, yes, they try to put the best foot forward, and try to make everything seem copacetic and like shiny, brand new penny, and nothing is wrong here. But it's just a facade, and there are, like I said, legislators that know that they need to ask certain questions, ask to go, outside of what they're being guided to. As a lawmaker in Florida, they are allowed to go at any point, anytime. They don't have to go, they can just show up. Hopefully a lot of them will take advantage of that as soon as it opens. There was a lot of visits prior to COVID. But it's kind of like when you're at your house and your mom comes over to visit, you kind of hide everything, underneath the couch or underneath the bed or in the closet, and you make sure she doesn't open the closet or look under the bed. And that's not right. But it's up to the lawmakers to ask those hard questions and to, veer off the guided tour that they're given. And I've spoken to at least 20 or so lawmakers over the summer. We did a lot of town halls for the Florida campaign of criminal justice reform, and we encouraged them to visit and to ask for other people and whatnot. And there's been ways that we've been able to have incarcerated individuals speak to the legislators and stuff to kind of voice their opinions. Unfortunately, there's a lot that are fearful that if they speak up, there will be retaliation, and in some instances there has been. But in order for things to get done, you have to speak up.
And I think right now it's the inmates, it's the family members that have to who have to speak up, because the prisons do not accurately report or publicly report what truly is going on inside the prisons.
Right. Well, take in case what happened at Lake Correctional. There was an individual that was beaten, and the only way that got out was because there was an incarcerated individual who had an illegal cell phone, but he recorded it and was able to get it out of the prisons, and it was sent to media all over, and that they arrested that correction officer. I think a few of them, but they arrested that correction officer that did that. Had that incarcerated individual not been able to record it, and people could see that it was a correction officer beating an incarcerated individual, I don't think that there would have been an arrest. And again, that was them using an illegal cell phone. And that's the thing. Sometimes, we're on recorded lines when we speak to them. There's JPay, which is what uses for emails and stuff like that. And a lot of that stuff is censored. I've heard stories where people have tried to send stuff in reference to COVID or anything like that, and it gets denied because they don't want that information in there. So it's difficult. The communication sometimes can be difficult, but it's going to take all of us, all of the families that have incarcerated individuals, the incarcerated individuals to speak up. I know that, for an instance, at one of the facilities that my husband was at, they were under quarantine. They were supposed to be able to go outside and to commissary, and one of the lieutenants or guards said no, and they all refused to go eat. And because they all refused to go eat, we're talking about 70 guys in a dorm, because they all refused to eat, they got their commissary and they got their recreation hour. Not that I'm, trying to encourage, but it just shows, we are a big number. If we speak, and we're just asking for good treatment, we're just asking for fair treatment. We're not trying to break any barriers or anything like that. We're just trying to be treated as humans for ourselves and for our loved ones.
The big, like you said, the decency, just asking for decency. But more importantly, if these individuals, if you take somebody who's already angry and who's already frustrated, you put them in the prison system and they are receiving this type of treatment, it's only increasing that frustration. It's only increasing that level of anger, so that when they get out, their chances of committing another crime because of the anger and the frustration increases. And so if we treat them decent, we show them decency, we give them the programs that everybody thinks that they're getting, that they're really not. It's better for society as a whole.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that the large majority of those incarcerated are coming home. They are going to be the person standing next to you at a 7-Eleven, at the gas pump, in Publix. And the thing is that if you look at pit bulls, everybody has this notorious things with pit bulls, and they're so dangerous. And if you train the pit bull and give it loving care and stuff like that, pit bulls can be the sweetest animal ever. And that's the same thing with incarcerated individuals. If you treat them with respect, are decent to them, then when they come home, they won't have the animosity towards anybody. Same thing with kids. You teach kids, to be mean and to hate, then that's what they grow up to be. But if you are good to them and respectful, and give them a decent meal, give them decent medical care, and give them decent commissary and decent uniforms, then they'll take pride in it, and allow them to help themselves. They are, like I said, majority of them are going to come back into society, and that's going to be the person driving next to you in the car. You don't want that person to be angry at society or angry at you because of the way that they were treated. That jeopardizes more public safety than anything else.
And you made a valid point. It is going to be that person standing next to you, or your mother, your father, your cousin, your brother. We as a whole in this nation incarcerate more people than any other country in the world. And we're third largest in size. So that speaks a lot about what we do here.
Yeah.
And we definitely do want to give them every chance we can. We're going to wrap up. And so the question I have is, if somebody wants to take action, somebody wants to help with moving forward change, what are your suggestions?
First, they have to speak up. They have to contact their legislators, the representatives, their senators, within the state, email them, ask them for a meeting, ask to speak to them. Typically you would go up to Tallahassee, but there's, a lot more restrictions, but just speak up, get involved. There's various groups that have different ways that you can speak up. And you just have to, go on Twitter, social media, follow your representative, ask them, what do you think about criminal justice reform? Social media, emails, phone calls. It's going to take everybody doing those things to let the lawmakers know that as a Floridian, a resident of Florida, that's important to you.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today, and remind everybody our podcast website is legalponds.org. There will be a transcript of this, as well as a link to Twitter for Vanessa. And again, we encourage everybody to reach out and make a difference.
This podcast of Legal Ponds is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as legal advice. If you need any guidance on your legal issues, please seek out the advice of a licensed lawyer. All thoughts, opinions, advice, and beliefs of our guest and/or material presented are not necessarily reflective of the opinions, thoughts, and beliefs of Legal Ponds and any affiliates of Legal Ponds.